Good evening and welcome to the January 13th, 2025 City Council meeting. I am Mayor Ross and tonight's meeting is brought to you live using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. And tonight's recording will be posted on the city's YouTube channel. So welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us. City Clerk Dean, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Benson,
Here.
Councilmember Watton,
Here.
Councilmember Holloway,
Here.
Councilmember Washington,
Here.
Councilmember Cotton. Here. Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Ross.
Yeah, I'm here and we are all here tonight. Council, would you please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? And Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, would you please lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item of regular business is to approve the agenda. Council may I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilor Watton. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
I'd like to add a couple items, after the confirmation of chaplain, would like to add a council confirmation of Joelle Gibson to the Economic Development Commission as recommended by mayor. May I have a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Christensen to add confirmation of reappointment to EDC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, so it's unanimous and will be added to the agenda.
Second one, would like to add a discussion under public safety of North Bend Police Services interlocal agreement update. May I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Johnson. Okay, by Councilor Johnson to add the North Bend ILA discussion. And this was added after our F&A discussion and would just provide an update regarding a meeting, North Bend Council meeting that happened last week. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And that item is also added to the agenda. And going back to the original agenda, any other comments regarding the agenda? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the agenda is unanimously approved as amended. Okay. The first item tonight is we have a public hearing. Do you have the list?
I don't.
It is for AB 25-003, the 2025 to 2030 utility rate adjustment. Looks like Dylan, do you have? Okay. Thank you. So if you wanted to speak at the public hearing, did you get a chance to sign up? We have two on here. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. So I will open the public hearing. In this proceeding, the community is invited to provide comments regarding the proposal to adopt ordinance 1303, establishing rates for the city's combined utility for the years 2025 to 2030. Only persons appearing in person will have the opportunity to speak. No one online public comments will be accepted during the public hearing. However, written comments could be submitted in person, mail, or email, and they were accepted until 3 p.m. today. I believe we did receive one public comment by email today. So those wishing to speak during the comment must sign up. And we have the sign up sheet here. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. And please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council will quietly and respectfully listen to your comments. So you will have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be advised at 30 seconds to please finish up your comments. So the first person we have is James Mayhew. You want to go over there? Over there. Thank you. I know, but that's where the camera is.
We move
Thank you.
things.
Jim Mayhew from Snoqualmie. By far the most complex thing we do on the Snoqualmie City Council is the utility rate setting process. We feel out of our depth because it involves technical engineering decisions and risk assessments, and because it involves complex financial modeling. It isn't clear how individual decisions within the models will ultimately impact rates, so we're unsure which parts of the decisions are most important. Ultimately, it comes down to two basic factors: the combined utility capital spending each year, especially in the first few years, and how much of that we pay for with fund balance and higher rates, and how much we pay for with debt. Pushing projects out even 1 or 2 years can massively lower the rate increases. At my newly elected orientation, I remember Dave Up the Grove saying that council members can do almost anything. They just can't do everything. I went through 2 rate studies, and both times we pushed a significant number of proposed projects out by a few years. That changed proposed double-digit rate increases down to more like 5%. We told our engineers that if something changed and a project had to be brought forward to come back and ask us, and we would adjust then. We're squeezed right now because of 2 massive projects that we're told we must do, but we haven't reacted to that. When that happens, we must push almost all projects later. That's the consequence. If one of the utilities is where the cost is, then we must reduce the others to mitigate the overall rate impact. This proposes stormwater increases of 54%. We will have doubled the rates in just over 10 years, and will relentlessly increase at 7.5% every year. The biggest stormwater driver is the massive increase in staff, allocated overhead, and increase in projects. We must find a way to dial this back. It has a massive double-digit increase in sewer rates for the first couple of years for residential and commercial customers. Our retailers are already struggling across the boards from a very poor holiday season. This could be the final straw for many of them. This level of increase to developers like the mill site will make their carrying costs prohibitive. They simply won't be able to get to shovels in the ground. And our residents simply aren't getting pay increases at these levels. Solving this complex challenge takes a village. However, the city has not made publicly available any of the presentations on the rate study, nor critically the draft rate study itself, which has all of the underlying projects and timing and borrowing and timing, so that the public can provide input and suggestions. Please go back and reconsider. Timing of spending, level of stormwater spending. Please maximize debt to bring down from double-digit rate increases, and please publish the rate study and hold another public hearing so that the community can help solve this.
Thank you. Next one, James Rimmer.
Good evening, Mayor Ross and council members. My name is James Rimmer. I'm the president of Snoqualmie Mill Ventures. Over the last 14 years, we've been honored to partner with the city of Snoqualmie, working diligently to bring our project to fruition. Today, I'm here to express significant concerns regarding the proposed utility rate increases, particularly the stormwater fees and the financial burden these increases impose on SMV. Currently, SMV incurs nearly $40,000 monthly in stormwater charges for a site classified as undeveloped, with 1,209 equivalent service units. Since annexation, we have paid approximately $3.9 million in surface water fees, an extraordinary financial contribution for a largely undeveloped site. These utility costs have created an overwhelming financial burden for SMV, undermining our ability to advance development activities. By 2030, with a 54% increase, our costs are projected to rise to $53,000 per month, equating to $640,000 annually. This is an untenable situation, placing the future of our project in jeopardy. While we fully support environmental stewardship and stormwater management, SMV is carrying a disproportionate share of revenue within this fee classification. These escalating costs are not only inequitable, but threaten the viability of our project, which holds significant potential for the city of Snoqualmie. We understand the importance of funding stormwater projects outlined in the city's capital improvement program, but the financial burden should not be unfairly shouldered by SMV. It's especially for parcels classified as undeveloped. We respectfully request that the council consider both the percentage increases and the actual dollar amounts being paid by ratepayers across all classifications.
including stormwater, water, and sewer fees. We are eager to engage in constructive dialogue with the city to find mutually beneficial solutions that balance the need to fund critical CIP projects while fairly addressing the financial contributions of ratepayers. Our goal is to support the city's vision while ensuring our project can move forward without being inhibited by excessive fees. Thank you for your attention to this critical issue and for considering our concerns as you deliberate on these proposed rate increases. We remain committed to working collaboratively with the city to achieve outcomes that benefit all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is the conclusion of the list of speakers. And now I declare the public hearing on AB 25-03, 2025 to 2030 utility rate adjustment closed at 7:11 PM. Thank you. Next, we have the ceremonial oath of office for Police Officer Wyatt Schnauer. We will ask, let's see, Officer Schnauer has taken the oath of office prior to this evening. Tonight we'll provide an opportunity to read the oath of office and then have opportunity for photos.
Good evening, council. And thank you for letting us come and take a few minutes of your time tonight. This is once again one of the greatest things that I get to do in my job description is to bring new officers to the city of Snoqualmie and North Bend. About 2 weeks ago, Officer Schnauer graduated the police academy, and he has 1 full week of training in his field training under his belt. So he is brand new. He's a baby police officer. So don't let the size fool you. We're lucky to have him because he came from so far away. He's originally from Reading, Pennsylvania. And then he went to college at Shenandoah University in Virginia. And after graduating college, he made his way out to Montana and he worked as a DNR wildland firefighter. And then moved over to Leavenworth after getting hired with the state of Washington to do, if I'm saying this wrong, you have to correct me. He was doing environmental studies and being out on the road doing checks on rivers and creeks and things like that. But he heard a calling and he wanted to do more. And we were lucky enough to receive his scores from public safety testing. And as soon as they brought him into my office for a chief's interview, I knew I wanted to hire him. This kid has the biggest heart. No pun intended. That's he just wants to do this job for the right reasons. So we are so lucky to have him. I'm just proud to sit here and watch him get sworn in and start his career of the next 35 years in Snoqualmie. Is that right? 35 years? Oh, good. Okay, good.
Testing. There you go. Okay, great. Okay. So I say your name. Having been duly appointed to the office of police officer of the city of Snoqualmie, Washington. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of my office as prescribed by law to the best of my ability.
Solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially use my office as prescribed by law to the best of my ability.
And that I will support and maintain the ordinances of the city of Snoqualmie and the laws and constitution of the state of Washington and the United States of America.
And the Constitution of the state of Washington, States of America.
Congratulations and welcome to the city. Okay, next introduction is the police chaplain, Pat Hammond. Chief Lynch will introduce our new chaplain.
Yes, so early in 2023, I happened to be in a Bible study at my church here in Snoqualmie, and I met Pat Hammond. And immediately we started talking, and once he found out I was the chief of police, it wasn't but seconds into our relationship that he let me know about his 35 years of experience with the Redmond Police Department as their chaplain. And immediately I started thinking, how can I get him out of retirement and to come to Snoqualmie? Well, the good thing for us was that he had met his soon-to-be wife and they got married and he moved to downtown Snoqualmie, which made my selling of this position a little bit easier. And so to have Pat here, it's an important position. It's one that we have not had at our department in quite some time. We use, historically, we use the chaplains from the Snoqualmie Fire Department or East Side Fire Department if we need one. But to have one in-house and not just to respond to calls, but to be there for the officers in the building, if the need arises, for him to do ride-alongs with the officers and to get to know them and have relationships with them. It speaks to our commitment to continuing our officer wellness program. And I could not be happier with the person that is in that uniform. And we are very extremely lucky to have Pat here. So I'm introducing Pat Hammond as our new chaplain. Have anything to say?
That's a first.
Sounds like a really great Bible study.
I would say from our perspective, we're excited to have welcome the police chaplain. Your support and guidance will be invaluable and will bring a sense of comfort and strength during challenging times to our police department. So thank you. Next item is confirmation of the mayor's recommendation to reappoint Joelle Gibson to the Economic Development Commission. We have a motion to reappoint Joelle Gibson.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilor Christensen. Joelle, she owns two businesses in historic downtown. She owns the Carousel and then she's getting ready to open up the new candy shop. And she's been on Economic Development Commission for several years. And she brings the perspective of downtown merchants. We're excited that she is willing to be reappointed. So any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And it's unanimous. Joelle Gibson is reappointed. Okay, thank you. Next item of business is AB 25-007, 2024 Mayor Pro Tem election. So at the first meeting of a new council or periodically, the members by majority vote shall designate one of their number as Mayor Pro Tem for such a period as the council may specify to serve in the absence or temporary disability of the mayor. Council, does anyone wish to nominate or self-nominate a council member to serve as Mayor Pro Tem? Councilor Christensen,
Move to nominate Councilmember Holloway to serve as Mayor Pro Tem.
Second?
so let's see. So Mayor Pro Tem, okay, Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, who's already Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, do you wish to accept the nomination?
Although I tried before my last nomination to recruit my replacement and may have tried all year long to reinforce that, I would accept again this year.
Thank you. Is there a second nomination? have to ask it 3 times. Is there any further nomination? Any further nomination? Any further nomination? Okay,
I'll totally vote for you if you go up against this guy.
yeah. Okay, so council, no further nomination. With no objection, I will close nominations, and they are now closed. So if council agrees, let's provide the opportunity for the candidate to provide a statement of why he is willing to step up to be Mayor Pro Tem again.
Didn't know that was a requirement. Okay. Um, As you all know, I've been in this seat for a good number of years. I will continue to try to bring some of that history forward, although I never thought I'd be the one doing it when I first took the seat. And to work together as a council to try to get, common ground, if not common ground, at least understand the issues we're talking and bring some light onto them. So we're doing educated guesses of what the imperfect decisions we have to make should be. I won't say anymore.
Counselor, is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the nomination or of Mayor Pro Tem Holloway as Mr. Holloway? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, that's right. Lewis is online. Okay, it is unanimous and Brian Holloway is reelected as Mayor Pro Tem Holloway. So congratulations. So being next item is AB 25-008, council liaison appointments. Do you wish to make appointments this evening or do you choose to wait until January 27th?
Let's have discussion. I didn't want to presume until after the vote and felt it bad etiquette. But in preparation, my proposal at this stage is that we maintain our current existing council positions as well as no change in chairs. Same thing for liaison positions. I ask that you review, make sure that I've got this all right. Council positions and chairs, as well as the back of the page is current liaison assignments. So if there's any alterations or something I missed, please make a note.
I failed
Lawton.
art. I
Good.
believe we have a different art commission liaison, and I believe it is Dr. Cotton, who's better at art than I am. And the second one is the task force as it stands wrapped up.
So should we take those off?
Let's take those off,
Okay.
please.
City Clerk, when you get ready, will you make note of that Councilor Cotton has the Arts Commission and we'll take the Affordable Housing Task Force off at this stage?
Councilor Christensen?
I am no longer the school district's liaison. That is Councilmember Johnson. And I did not reapply for King Conservation District after serving on it for 3 years. So I don't know
Okay.
who they've used to fill the position, but I'm not in that role anymore.
All right, Dina, please note those changes and we'll have that up.
Councilor Watton?
One more,
Okay.
One
and
more.
that's SCA, the Regional Law, Safety and Justice Committee I was reappointed to, so
Okay.
we can put that on in place of art, I guess.
Changing major, all right.
Anything else?
And please note, a lot of this was off our websites, the council member listings, so we'll need to update those to reflect discussion tonight.
Right. So we are to vote on this.
All right. So with those changes, that's my motion on the council committee positions and liaisons. May I have a second on the motion as discussed?
Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilor Johnson to approve the list as discussed. Any further discussion? See none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And it's unanimous and the we now have the listing for the liaisons and council committees. So thank you. Let's see. Final item is for public hearings presentations is a proclamation 25-01 National Mentoring Month. So proclamation, whereas January 2025 will mark the 23rd anniversary of National Mentoring Month and annual campaign to focus attention to the need for members, as well as how each of us can work together to increase the number of mentors to help ensure positive outcomes for our young people. And whereas mentoring programs like Youth Success Mentoring, a program of Empower Youth Network, makes our communities and our states stronger by driving impactful relationships that increase social capital for young people and provide invaluable supports, network supports. And whereas mentoring plays a pivotal role in career exploration and supports workplace skills by helping young people set career goals, equipping mentors with the skills needed to support the professional growth of young people, and drives positive outcomes for young people and businesses. And whereas quality mentoring promotes healthy relationships and communication, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, and growth of a young person and their relationships with other adults. Whereas National Mentoring Month is the time of year to celebrate, elevate, and encourage mentoring across our state and recruit caring adult mentors in the city of Snoqualmie. I, Catherine Ross, Mayor of the City of Snoqualmie and Snoqualmie City Council, do hereby proclaim January 2025 as National Mentoring Month in the city of Snoqualmie. And there's a full proclamation that you can read online. And this evening we have with us Empower Youth Network, Kathy Highland, who's the Youth Success Mentoring Coordinator, and Tom Crawford, the mentoring volunteer.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. We really appreciate it. I'm Kathy Hyland. I am the coordinator for Youth Success Mentoring. We provide mentors for SVSD as well as Riverview School District. We have mentors in every school in the district from North Bend to Duval, kindergarten through 12th grade. We greatly need mentors, so I encourage everyone, if you don't have time to go in during school hours to mentor, tell 5 people you know that we need mentors and keep spreading the word. I'm going to let Tom take over. He's one of our amazing mentors. He's mentored for us a long time.
Yeah, I believe that my name is Tom Crawford, and thank you for the acknowledgement. And just want to affirm what Kathy said in terms of the need for mentors. A little bit of my background relative to mentoring is I'm currently at 2 different schools. Previous at Twin Falls, and I'm also at 2 Rivers. So I've had over the last 5+ years, 6, 7, 8 different mentors. We meet weekly, and we do a variety of different projects. Sometimes we play games until I figure out that I can't beat them at anything, and then we change the game, something else. And one of the things that I have learned through mentoring is, of course, as we often hear, sometimes it's just about showing up because it's a relationship that you're trying to build with the different boys. In my case, I'm aligned with boys. Meet on a weekly basis, as I mentioned, and I just get a lot of value out of it. I've been retired for about 11+ years now, and it gives me, kind of a source of joy. That. So if you know of anybody that would be interested in committing a maximum of 1 hour or even more per week, we would greatly appreciate it. Empower Youth is just an amazing organization, very organized, and I think people would be very would really appreciate and associate. So anyway.
I've left some cards on the table. If anybody's interested or you want to pass them on, anyone, feel free to take them. Do you have time for a quick picture?
Yes, absolutely. We did. Councilor Washington, did you have a comment?
Just something to add real quickly, Madam Mayor. I'm actually out of town on business, and unfortunately, I will have to leave the meeting a little bit early. Councilmember Johnson will cover any business related to community development in my partial absence.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for understanding. Thank you, Council.
At this time, we will provide time for residents to comment on items that are not on the agenda. There will not be online public comments. Written comments are encouraged and may be submitted in person or emailed to cityclerk@citywa.gov. Is there anyone within the council chambers that wishes to have public comment this evening? If so, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing none, our public comment is now closed. And we move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains approval of the city council meeting minutes dated December 9th, 2024 and December 19th, 2024. Approval of the claims report dated December 9th, 2024. AB 24-120 interlocal agreement renewal with King County for jail services, and AB 25-004 interlocal agreement for fire garage consortium. Is there a motion to approve the council's consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Watton and second by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway. Is there any discussion regarding these? Councilor Christensen?
Just a connection with AB 24-120, the interlocal agreement renewal with King County for jail services. The most updated copy of the contract wasn't included. It was by mistake, it looks like. The information that's in the existing contract that you have was what was ultimately passed by King County. But I did just want to flag that in case anybody had any concerns. I don't have any concerns with the representations that those figures are the ones that will be in the ultimate contract, but in case anybody wants to look at it more or have it sent back to committee, I did want to at least flag that.
Okay, thank you.
Since been updated. It's since been updated.
Oh, the packet has been updated? Okay, so the packet has been updated and now it includes the updated contract.
Is there any public comment regarding any of the items in the consent agenda? Seeing none. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the motion passes and the consent agenda is approved. Next item is ordinance AB 24-096, Transportation Impact Fee Program. This is the third reading of ordinance 1301. We'll have Councilor Johnson. Would you please read the introduction and motion?
Make sure I'm on the right thing. Okay. SMC Title 20.09 Transportation Impact Fees will allow the city to capture a fair and proportionate share of the costs of new transportation facilities needed to serve new growth and development within the city of Snoqualmie. Move to approve ordinance 1301, amending the Snoqualmie Municipal Code to add Title 20.09 Transportation Impact Fees and associated rate study.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Johnson and second by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway. Is there any public comment regarding this item? Seeing none. Any discussion? We have Community Development Director Emily Artecha, who's here to ask or answer any questions. Any comments or discussion? Okay. Then going to a vote, seeing all, let's see. Ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And it passes unanimously. The Transportation Impact Fee Program. Next one is AB 25-003, 2025 to 2030 Utility Rate Adjustment. This is the first reading of ordinance 1303. Councilor Benson, would you please read the introduction?
Ordinance 1303 will amend the utility rates for the years of 2025 to 2030. The recommended rate changes are designed to match rate revenue requirements. The recommended rate changes are based on a 2025 to 2030 utility rate study conducted by FCS Group. And the motion is public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1303.
Thank you. Is there any public comment regarding this item? So please raise your hand. We already had a public hearing earlier, but you do have the option to have one more comment. Okay. Seeing none, our CIP manager, Dylan Gamble, is here to present and discuss this item.
Absolutely. So I can take you to the show here. So what you'll have tonight is, of course, the first public hearing, which we had earlier this evening. It requires 2 meetings because this is an ordinance just for process. This ordinance would modify the utility rates for the city for the years of 2025 through 2030. Sorry, I'm trying to pull this ordinance up for everyone. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so this is the ordinance in question here. If you were to review this, essentially what is going on is a lot of description of the materials in question and the process that went through to get here. In addition to that, you'll get down to the bottom. If you were to look through our code, it has a lot of tables and charts, or tables, it has no charts, I apologize. The tables are reflective of the existing rates through a certain time frame. And in our case, it's 2021 through 2026. We're going to be, this ordinance would propose to modify those rates through 25 through 30. So there's a bit of slight overlap, and I just want to make you aware of that as you review this. If it's struck out, that means it's going away. Underlined means it's coming back in. This gets a little hectic to read. I completely understand, especially when you have a multiple chart document like this where the strike throughs and everything make it a little complicated, but that is the short note on how to read it. I'm happy to go digging into this as much as council would like, but I'd like to also maintain space for comments and questions that happened during the Public Works Committee last week. So if you'd like, I can jump into those, or I can pause here. Just let me know what you'd prefer.
Did you have a presentation?
We do have a presentation. I just want to make sure that there's not anything that we don't want to keep going down this road first. Do we want to step back, look at the presentation, hear the comments from Public Works Committee, and then move forward? Or do you want me to wait here?
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Do you have a table showing the stormwater rates?
Yes, it might take me a sec to scroll to it. Would you like me to show you in ordinance form or the existing code?
Whichever comes first up, just as I want to see the existing rates and proposed rates moving forward. I'm concerned there's some confusion between stormwater rates and commercial sewer rates, high-low.
Sure.
Wastewater rates. And just want to highlight the point that they are different. You get stormwater is one rate, wastewater is another rate. You get, and further for commercial, it gets broken up into high and low depending on the treatment required for the effluent coming from that customer class. Okay, so there's some comparison between stormwater and commercial rates, and it's not a good comparison.
Yes, so let me find that in. Sorry, this is, I think it's a pretty long document, so bear with me for just a second.
While you're looking for that,
Councilor Benson?
what is the distinction that you want to draw? Both of those rates fall into this rate study, right?
Correct.
And they both affect the amount of money coming out of wallets and bank accounts, yes?
At least in Snoqualmie Ventures, there was a statement that said that in comparison to commercial high-low rates, we're paying a disproportionate rate in our stormwater. Okay, my point is that's an invalid comparison. Stormwater is a separate rate from wastewater. Okay, and as such, I assume right now you're not paying a lot of commercial because we want you to be, but I don't think right now you're paying a lot of commercial rate, wastewater rate.
Well, I think their point was that they're getting killed by the stormwater.
And I just want to make that distinction. I'm making no comment that, yes, the rate is going up in all categories. And stormwater is one of those. But we probably ought to look at, if he's got the table for stormwaters, these are the rates by which your stormwater fees would go up. Okay? There may be a separate question of, and I would take that out as a homework assignment of how are the ERUs calculated, sorry, too many acronyms. ERUs calculated and how to get into that discussion, but I think that's a separate discussion from rates. It was probably documented in one of our development agreements or whatever, okay? So I would just want to get that one off the board so that we can discuss, focus in on what are the rates and how are they going? What can we do to adjust the rates? I apologize if I dragged that out.
No worries. This is that chart. I'll zoom in. Hopefully this helps. So ESUs are an equivalent service unit. So for example, most of the stormwater, one residential household is a single ESU. This is kind of a way of converting a commercial or other use to a residential equivalent, which is how most of the stormwater charges are created. So if we were to go to the code, it lists how you get this ESU number dependent on the property and how it's developed, things of that nature. For the math equation or the homework assignment, I suppose.
So it's going from 2024,
Yeah.
is that 2857
Where do you see that?
under 2024?
Ah, yes. Okay. So this 2025 is what our existing code says, the one with the strike through.
Right.
And that means the number is 2943 for 2025. If the rate study were to go through as this ordinance would propose, it would now become 3071.
3071, okay.
per
Counselor,
ESU.
Counselor Benson?
No, I understand that now.
So that's still better than 10%.
Counselor Watton?
Point of clarification, the increase is the 2857 that's the strike through for 2024. And instead of going to 2943 that was under the previous study, it's jumping from 2857 to $30.71, right?
There is an existing rate in place right now, a rate study, so to speak, in a code. In 2025, we would have pivoted right over to that number in 2025. And what we're proposing is this ordinance is to make that number different than what it says in our code. Reflected in the chart. And that's a little funny, but in a lot of sense, we've been looking at 2024 numbers for the rate study because we were in 2024. And so a lot of the details that we've talked about have been in 2024 numbers, but we're in 2025 right now. I know that's a bit funny because it's January.
Do you want to comment? Counselor Watton?
The way it stands right now, and we had this discussion previously, I am not willing to accept the rate increase that's being proposed through the entire study because we can go back and bond more than what we've decided to bond. When we don't bond, what happens is we pull from reserves. We have to put money back immediately into reserves so that we bring things up to the right level. Whereas if we were to bond, we wouldn't be looking at for residents of a 12% and almost 20% for businesses. We'd be able to get that number down. And I think former council member Mayhew eloquently put it, that you'd get that down to a reasonable number. You might get it down somewhere below 6%. It definitely, and I think here's the other thing too, is that we have to keep in mind, this is not the only thing going up for businesses and for individuals. We're going to see other things that they don't have control over, and we're seeing it in fires. It's going to impact insurance costs and across the board. So we need to take a more measured approach. And my thing is, let's push it back to committee and bring back a reasonable solution.
Counselor Cotton?
I think in committee, one of the things we were looking at definitely we had concerns about, we discussed palatability to the customers and such. But one of the big things that we also approached was not wanting to finance the whole thing. That was a big part of the decision we made. So we went more in the middle as far as, you know, the financing part of it instead of the max financing. And yes, unfortunately, that does drive the rates up a little bit, but we were trying to keep it in a more moderate balance. And if that's something we need to go back and change and have more discussion back in committee, then, you know, I'm absolutely amenable to that. I just hate to see the city go so far in debt as we already are. I'm one that just hates to take on debt. So I'll be upfront about that. It's the old, is it a want or a need type of thing. But anyway, if we need to go back, and I hate to even mention this in front of Glenn Gamble here, as far as maybe look at additional numbers or review some of the ones that we had from before. You know, maybe we need to go back and take a second look at that. But as a group and committee, there was a consensus about the decision we made about what to bring forward to council.
Counselor Christensen?
Yeah, I do have some concerns about the impacts of going forward with the numbers that we have right now on our small businesses. I was at the merchant meeting over the last week, and they have been hit really hard, especially by traffic and other things. And I do worry about having this pile on. I share Councilmember Watton's concerns there as well. And it is a delicate balance between taking on more debt and then obviously having it hit here or further down. But I think that I do have significant concerns about that.
Counselor,
Go back to committee.
Counselor Benson?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate description of our discussion in committee that Councilmember Cotton gave. But I will also say that I definitely feel like I fit the description of the council member who's over skis on this. I don't fully understand it. And as I've continued to study some of these things like the generational equity concept, there is clearly an unfairness in saying to our current residents, you need to foot the bill for this infrastructure that's going to be used for the next 5 decades. You know, it's not a short-term piece of infrastructure. And if our current citizens and our current businesses are taking the full hit to the teeth now for something that's going to be used and enjoyed for many decades, that's not really fair. And you know, looking at the history of Snoqualmie, when the water treatment plant was originally put in, it was put in by the developers. We didn't have to pay for that. And so we got a huge bonus there. But where we are right now is a place where there does need to be another big investment in the infrastructure. And I'm the same as you. I hate taking on debt. I like to buy a burrito with cash. But that's not necessarily, I'm coming to feel that that's not necessarily the same way that you buy water treatment plants. So yeah, at this point, I'm curious about what are all of the projects that would affect any part of the rate that can be pushed off. And I know that we looked at some projects that we're at a point where we can't push them off. They are basically public safety issues related to the cleanliness of water and dealing with that, and that's great. But I think we need to push some of these other projects. I mean, because there's all kinds of things that affect these rates that we can look at pushing off a couple of years or a year. They're in, you know, I mean, even planting trees affects the stormwater rates. So maybe we need to look at more of those kinds of things that can be pushed off. And I think we actually, in my opinion, we do have to maximize that. We have to do this in in whatever's going to make it so that our current residents aren't taking it completely in the teeth now for something that, you know, you pay these high rates this year and then it turns out you move in 3 years. Well, the water treatment plant's still gonna be going for another 50 years after that, and you paid for this thing that you're never gonna use. It's not really fair. There's gonna be people who are gonna be here for a long time using this stuff, and it makes sense for them to pay it as they go, in my opinion. That's how I've come to think about it. But I think your description of our conversation in committee is 100% accurate. I'm just learning as I go here.
Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, hearing the discussion, hear what sounds like some broad consensus that we don't like the numbers being where they're at. Where they're high. We're asking for a lot of big increases. And I think staff might be hearing some pushback now that we're kind of seeing that the rubber's hitting the road, that, oh my goodness, how are we going to possibly ask our citizens to pay for this and our businesses? But here's the problem. We can't wave a magic wand and make those numbers go down. If you were to plot how much money we need versus time and take the area underneath that graph, it's going to be the same. You can spread it out, teaching you calculus. You can spread it out over a longer amount of time by pushing projects out. Is that going to make the water in the toilets flow the wrong direction? I don't know, but that's something for Parks and Public Works maybe to ask about and see, can we push some stuff out? If we spread it out over time, then that lowers the amount. It's still the same total amount of money, right? But it's just over a greater period of time. So perhaps just pushing a little bit harder on what can we push out? We've got a couple of gigantic problems. Are those things that can be delayed? Maybe not. But then in place of those, are there other things that we really like to have, and maybe we're a little bit nervous about what's going to happen if we don't get those projects done, but maybe we'll be okay if we wait a couple of years. So that's something to look at. And then in terms of maximizing debt, I think the question that I have is, what is the likely amount of interest going to be on that debt versus inflation? And I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, and I don't remember them being given to us, but I'm wondering if we were to just make a rough estimate projecting out inflation versus the debt, versus the interest, how would those compare? And if they are similar, then maximizing debt starts to make a whole lot more sense. Let's see. What was the other thing? Oh, yes. I was very surprised by in the materials that they sent out with the presentation that we've got. I believe that that's actually slide 20 on the presentation that's up there. To see some of the past rate increases on our, I'm just looking at the commercial, but you can do the same thing for the residential, and it is substantial. Just a couple of stats here. From 2017 to 2019, the sewer increased by 77% in 3 years. And then between 2014 and 2016, storm went up 53% in just 3 years. So the amount that we are asking for increase, that was on high, by the way, commercial high. But you see big numbers that are larger than what we're talking about now for the commercial low, for the residential, et cetera. So these are not historically catastrophic numbers. I'm not saying they're not big, but I'm just saying that when you put it in an historical context, I don't know if you say the H or not. Anyway, in past contexts, it does kind of paint a different picture. That said, that doesn't mean that we should just because we have had large rates in the past, large rate increases, doesn't mean we should go for them now just because we have before. Of course, we should look at trying to find what's the most equitable to our citizens. But yeah, we can't just wave a magic wand and make the numbers go away. We have to figure out and make some tough calls on what that's actually going to be. What projects are we going to push out? Staff, do we need to have as many people working in those departments as we do now? Maybe we do. Maybe the answer is absolutely yes. Something for the committee to perhaps look at. But it's going to cost, it's going to make something have to give.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
So, no bank will give you a bond or loan at an interest rate lower than inflation. They're in it to make money. Either that or they're not in it very long, okay? So any debt you give will have an interest rate projected to be more than inflation, with the exception of one source. I remember, the exception of one source where the state is actually giving us a rate close to zero, if not zero.
1%.
1%. So that'll be, and that's for the irrigation reservoir. We're getting a 1% loan from state, so that's actually we gotta maximize on that, because that's money we're getting loaned at a rate below inflation. But the other part of it is, again, the more you put into debt, it increases the area under that curve by the percentage of the interest rates. Okay, so you are there's a cost to doing that. I view it more of an issue of who do you want to levy the cost on of replacement of a part of the utility? Those who used it or those who are going to use its replacement? And usually you split the difference. You say, we'll do it both ways. So rate and debt. Debt is a mechanism under which you transfer that cost to future residents, right? And again, the only other thing is you could look at GFCs to picking up a more portion of at least the added capacity. Other than that, it's pretty simple, guys. The cost of operations, the cost of capital needs to be funded by the rates according to the mechanisms we have. So we either need to move capital out or I'm not sure what, because the math doesn't allow you to just throw numbers out of the air.
Councilor Watton?
So I have a certain consternation with the numbers that we're discussing, and my job during the day is dealing with numbers. So please forgive me. If we look at 13.08.090, commercial base and volume rate structure, and the last rate study are the struck out numbers. And so as we look at the portrayal of those numbers, 2024, for instance, under low commercial is 104.91. In 2024, it would go to $126.89. And that's a 20.95% increase in a single year. The second one is a high usage. Again, under $134.70 in 2024 increases to $171.06. And my math tells me that's a 26.99%, unless my calculation is wrong, increase in a single year. That is a huge jump. We need to go back. We need to look at bonding, because here's the other thing. The average house now in our community is over $1.5 million. Nobody walks in with $1.5 million in their pocket cash and buys a house. Very few times. They go out and they finance it and they spread it out over 30 years, sometimes longer. That's what we're doing. This is a capital investment. This is not a one-time thing. We need to consider, and back to Councilmember Benson's point, is this is an investment that is more than a couple decades. And we need to treat it as such. And doing that will help bring those rates down. So it is possible. So we need to take a deeper look at it and be more intentional and be more sensitive to the impact that it has. Because this is not the only thing going up. There are a lot of things going up. And they're all compounding, and it's making it harder and harder, not only for residents, but businesses as well. So we really need to take a deeper dive into this. Another month of us doing that will be money well spent and money well saved for our residents and our businesses.
Were there key parts of the presentation that you wanted to share, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Am I good to go? Let me pull it. So I would like to get this going. So, what we did for this presentation is we took a look at the comments we got from the Public Works Committee. The palatability discussion. We also created a high-low average cost historical over time. So generating a sample customer class, kind of like we did for residential. And we modeled that so you can have some data to kind of see over time. And that's the slide that we went to earlier. As well as we took a look at some of the options for or considerations in terms of trying to make the rates a bit lower. Specifically, we were looking at residential as a customer class, but generally they actually trickle out to everything, right? So what we've done is we've taken a look at kind of a swath of ideas, and we would like to show you them. So Sergey, if you're on, I'd like to get rolling. Sergey's going to kick us off when we get to the section on what options we have. We can maybe slow down and have a discussion there.
I am. And did you want to share your screen, Dylan, or?
Nope, I'm gonna let you do it for a while. That's
All
that way I
right,
can keep track of the things.
that sounds great. I'm going to share my screen now. You should be seeing the presentation. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, well, I'll just dive right in. Good evening, council, and thanks again for allowing me to join you tonight to go over the rate study and just do a quick refresher of our discussions, as well as try to address some of the questions that came about from the prior committee meeting. We're going to do a quick background. I'm going to be going pretty quick since we've covered a lot of this information before, and then we'll dive into and slow down a little bit once we get to those follow-up questions. So here, just a quick refresher of our progress to date. We started early 24 in the comprehensive study update. We have been meeting with staff, with the committee, with the council fairly frequently. We've had 9 to 10, maybe even 11 meetings talking about fundamentals of rate setting, going through each step of the analysis, providing impacts and soliciting feedback and direction on all the scenarios that we have shown and presented before moving on to the next steps. So the last time we met was on December 9th, talking about the last step of rate design. Really, just as, again, a refresher, a rate study usually is performed in a sequential order. There are 3 steps that are involved. Step number 1 is what is called the revenue requirement and focuses on the big pictures of the utilities. Here, the main message is that each utility needs to operate on a standalone basis. Water needs to pay for water, sewer needs to pay for sewer, and so on. We do not want utilities subsidizing or cross-paying for other utilities. Now, step 1 identifies the total need or deficiency, if there is one, of each utility on a multi-year basis, without looking at if the class of service is paying their allocated share of costs. When we move to step 2, the cost of service analysis, this is where we answer the question if there are cost differences, and if there are classes that are not paying their allocated share. If there are those differences, what do we do about it? Lastly, once we have gone through those 2 steps, we looked at the structures themselves and developed the fixed and variable charges that collect the dollars identified in the first 2 steps. Now, going back to the beginning, we did identify that there were deficiencies for all utilities that we have modeled in a multi-year perspective. The key driver was the capital improvement program. There are also pressures coming in from slower than anticipated growth, as well as pressures from inflation. We experienced some of the highest inflation we have seen in the last couple of years due to many sources, in particular supply chain issues, which were not accounted for in the prior analysis. Now, when focusing on the revenue requirement, we met with the committee and the council over 2 dedicated meetings and talked about 3 scenarios, primarily focusing on financing the capital and paying for our projects. We looked at options that were 100% capital, looked at maximizing debt, where we used the reserves that we had, as well as using the debt that we could from a most effective perspective, which looked at about 50% debt, 50% cash financing, and then the hybrid approach somewhere in the middle. When we met with the council, the full council, we requested to develop an additional scenario that looked at an alternative that was somewhere between the hybrid and the maximizing debt alternative as well. So there are multiple scenarios, iterations, numbers that we have presented and gone back and forth on. Now, on this slide, you'll see a summary of the scenario that was the last seen on December 9th. This is just the revenue requirement view without taking into cost of service phase-in by class. So this is strictly the overall increase from the revenue requirement. And the typical residential bill under that scenario that we discussed would see a 12.35% adjustment in 25, followed by 6 and almost a little under 5% adjustments after that. With this scenario, we were looking at about $33.5 million with a rounding of new debt issuances within the next 6-year horizon, anticipated, not guaranteed, but anticipated in 3 separate issuances. When we looked at cost of service, we did identify that there were still some interclass differences present, as we did in the prior studies. And usually when we look at cost of service, we want to see that classes are within a certain range of reasonableness of cost of service. We usually like to say plus or minus 10% because of deviations in usage, weather patterns, budgeting, and so on. What we saw in the water utility is that the multifamily class was paying more than their allocated share cost, while retail irrigation was paying less. And on the sewer side, residential and more so multifamily, was paying more than their allocated share costs, and commercial high was paying less. This is consistent with the trends that we found in 2016 and then validated again in 2020, and have been gradually trying to make progress, moderating impacts of any individual class versus collecting the total dollars. When we presented these findings to the committee over 2 meetings and another meeting with the council, we discussed alternative ways to address that difference. One option was to do nothing, leave it alone, and apply the increases equally to all classes. One option was to look at interclass cost allocation adjustments that were gradual as a phase-in, and one option was to just go all the way right to cost of service and make substantial adjustments all at once in 1 year. Based on our discussion, we kind of honed in on the phase-in alternatives, but the committee did ask us to look at 2 additional alternatives that would try to mitigate and reduce the impacts and speed up the phase-in for the multifamily class of service. So based on that guidance and review with council, we settled on these phase-in strategies. So what we're looking at here is just a summary from the original scenarios for the water and sewer utilities. The upper graphic is just a summary of what you've seen before for the water utility, and the bottom graphic is the sewer. And the general logic that we implemented that was consistent to the guidance in the prior studies is that any class that was pretty close to cost of service would get the average increase for that utility. Any class that needed to go down would either be left at current rates or increased less than the average increase. And any class that indicated the need to go up would go up at a little bit more than the average. And that way we would make progress towards cost of service without impacting anybody too significantly relative to the overall cost of service adjustment that would be needed to get them all the way there in one time. So the impact of these adjustments are twofold: the overall annual increase as well as interclass adjustments. So as an example, in the water utility, the overall increase is 5.75%. In order for us to collect the total bucket of revenue requirements of 5.75% more, some classes were left constant, like multifamily. Others were increased greater than the average of 9.5. We can't simply not increase any multifamily and raise everybody at 5.75 and still collect the same amount of money. In total, we need to collect 5.75% more. That means somebody needs to be more and somebody needs to be less. So that was the main guidance from that step of the analysis. Then lastly, we moved into cost rate design. At that point, we met with the committee twice and the council again one more time to talk about some alternatives that the council and the committees had at their consideration. Some of the options we circled around were keeping the current structure as is, with an emphasis on collecting the total dollars that we needed to generate, because as you saw on the prior slide, some of the utilities were greater than others and would put pressure on our customers. And if we did any kind of structure balancing, there would be customers that might see even greater impacts, while some customers might see lower impacts. But in general, you could see variability in adjustments by instituting any structural changes. We talked about looking at incentivizing conservation even more, and we also looked at addressing potentially sewer-based volume rates for single-family customers. Now, because of our revenue shortfall needs in the short term, we wanted to focus on the overall revenue collection. So the main guidance was to keep the structures as they are and really pass on the cost of service phase-in class-specific adjustments by utility without modifying structures. And that is, again, was consistent with the prior councils and past studies as well. So on this slide, this is a summary of the prior slide that you've seen in the past showing the class-specific adjustments for a typical average bill by class of service. Now, as the class gets bigger, there's going to be a lot more variability, but again, it would have been too much information to provide you. So we tried to focus on the average, and there's a definition of what we used for each comparison. 7 CCF of water for residential customers because the sewer and the storm rates are fixed. We assume 6 units, 24 CCF of consumption, and 3 equivalent service units for multifamily for their bill. And you can see the rest at the bottom, what we assume for the commercial low and commercial high. Now, the impacts range from 12% rounding down here for residential to 6% the next year, followed by around 4.5 to 4.25. Multifamily, about 5.5 to 2s to 1s. Commercial low, the 12.7 to about almost 7 and 5s, and commercial high, close to 19, followed by 9 and almost 6.5s and 7s. Now, since then, in the new year, the city staff had a meeting with the Parks and Public Works Committee on January 7th. Similar concerns were raised during that meeting, as have been discussed today regarding the overall impact to the rates. So the committee requested some additional information. One option they wanted to look at is what can we do to lower the overall combined residential bill somewhere under 10%. That was just a scenario to test out, as well as the look at the long-term historical rate adjustments by class of service. So for your consideration today, with the limited time that we had available since that meeting, we brought back one additional consideration for you. This scenario looked at rework. We had to go back and rework all the stages of the analysis since last Tuesday or so, or Wednesday. We redid the revenue requirement, the cost of service phase in, and then the rate design was a little bit more straightforward. Now here we did focus on the sewer utility. Internally, as we were developing this scenario, we did look at modifying the water and stormwater adjustments, but because the sewer utility was the main driver of the bill to be over that 10% threshold, that is the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak, that you could have on that 2025 year. And that was really the driver for the first year's higher increase. We tried to look at lowering or modifying the front end adjustments for water and storm. They did not have as much of an impact on that overall bill because sewer is such a big portion of their overall bill as well. So due to the time available between last meeting and today, we primarily focused on modifying the sewer adjustment. Now for the cost of service, again, we took into the consideration the prior discussions we had with you in all those meetings that we had, and we superimposed the same policy guidance of a phase-in for this modified sewer scenario. So we did use a phase-in, it was just adjusted to the new revenue requirement. And then similarly for the rate structure, we did not make any modifications to the rate structure. Now for all utilities, because we're already into January, we had to delay the implementation assumption for our rate adjustments, which is forecasting a loss of about $150,000 in revenue between all 3 utilities, and that's an estimate per month. Now, if it's a volume-based utility like the water utility, some months will be greater, some will be higher. So this is a rough estimate that we're losing about $150,000 of funds for these utilities by delaying any of these adjustments. So if we take a bit longer to make these modifications, you can basically multiply this deficiency by number of months potentially, and then that would have an impact in some form or another, either through additional cost cutting or additional rate adjustments. Now, when looking at the scenario, focusing again on the sewer utility, we basically looked at increasing the total borrowing that we had in our forecast period. In this example, we looked at increasing our borrowing by about $700,000 for the sewer utility. Now, the main impact that we saw that would occur is that the sewer total debt service coverage would fall below the target level. The city currently has an internal policy of about 1.50 for total debt service coverage. And as we talked about in the beginning, each utility needs to be self-sufficient. So in this case, the projected sewer coverage for total debt was dropping to about 1.39, which could have potential rating policy issues, potentially. Again, we're not financial advisors and we're not bond rating agencies, but if you have a policy and we're dropping below the policy, it'll depend on how the creditor folks will look at that issue. We also are projecting under this scenario that our balances for the sewer utility, again, independently for the sewer utility, would get down to zero on the capital side. So we'll have operating reserves in 26, but in 26, our capital reserves will be pretty much drawn down to zero. You can mitigate it by borrowing more, but if you borrow more, your coverage drops even further than 1.39. And our bare minimum, oh, go ahead.
We have questions in the room, so I know you can't see them, so.
Yeah,
Oh,
Counselor
sorry about
Benson?
that.
Yeah, I don't understand that middle part.
Okay.
The projected scenario forecast sewer coverage at 1.39 in 2025. I have no, I don't have any idea what that means. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so when you borrow, oh,
Wait,
go
wait,
ahead.
Dylan, could you explain it real quick?
Yes, I can. So essentially we have, well, I know Drew's gonna want to sneak up here anyway, but the fast and dirty of it is we have financial policies that are guided and they're considering the impacts that having debt on the system are. And so there's essentially a coverage requirement that the city imposes on itself for debt. Okay, sat down. That must be, I'm on point. But so in this case, what we're trying to describe here is that our policies have a coverage requirement that's at 1.5. If we were to consider going below it, dipping below the amount of our self-imposed coverage requirement, we could get down to 1.39 by 2025. Consequence of that would be that we'd be going below our balance without using reserves, essentially. So in a sense, a reserve for us acts as our coverage.
And the imposition on how much we can borrow is our own, that's our own policy.
In this case, it has an impact. A lot of how much we could borrow is actually the size of the utility.
Is the what now?
The scale of the utility. So for example, we talked before about revenue requirement. We talked about how we don't want to exceed, I think the number is really close to 50% of funding of the projects. In theory, if we had like a different size cash balance, we could approach things differently. But in this case, we don't, and therefore we would be nipping into our reserve in order to try to achieve the projects with this model.
When I've seen discussions of bonding in the past, though, the capacity for the city to bond is massively larger than what we bond.
Sure.
So I guess that's why I'm confused on this. Are those unrelated things because one is utilities and the other's general fund, or?
No.
Yes, correct, right? So we have LTGO bonds, for example, and that's where the debt capacity limit comes into play. When you're working with revenue bonds, which in this situation, that is what would we be issuing out there. It's based off how much revenue the utility can really generate overall to support those bonds.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Stay up here, Jim, because I'm gonna make statement. So if I have $10 in debt servicing to pay over a year, this statement here of 1.5 means that I have $15 in reserve. In addition to that $10
You
debt
would
service.
be generating $15 in net revenue.
$15.
So it's your operating revenue minus your operating expenses. If you have $10 of debt service, you'd want to generate $15 in net revenue in order to cover that.
Right.
Then you would be generating $5 additional of additional revenue that could then potentially be applied to projects and so on. So that is in essence what we're setting here. Primarily, the reason why we have this policy in the first place is to ensure to those that are purchasing our bonds, for example, investors, that we have both the willingness and the ability to pay. So obviously it would be a bit reticent on my part to come up here and tell you guys that really I'm interested in breaking policies. I'm not. I do not like this whatsoever, potentially to go below 1.5 times our total annual debt service, basically.
No, but also,
Yeah.
we periodically get reviewed. And
We
get a rating of how good or bad of an investment we are for these banks to do bonds and everything else. This policy helps in regards to get us, we've got a fairly good rating right now. As far as our debt, I think we had one or two more notches to go, and
So,
that was amazing if you could get into those.
right, we were reaffirmed for our AA rating on our water, sewer, and stormwater utility bonds in September of this year. And certainly I've got comments from them. I actually had my own presentation on credit ratings, I think overall, but without giving that presentation itself, in essence, some of the comments as a part of that review from S&P, which is our credit rating agency, stated that the rating further reflects our view of the combined system's underlying economic strength, diversity, and wealth. The city council's demonstrated ability and willingness to increase service rates that promote cost recovery and revenue stability, sound historical all-in coverage that we believe will remain at levels that we consider credit supportive, liquidity position, and then good operational management practices and policies, of which this 1.5 times the total annual debt service is really important. So to that, what I don't want to risk is I don't want to risk receiving a AA minus or potentially a single A, for example. What's the risk of that? I'm not sure, right? Necessarily. I can't come up here and forecast exactly what that is if we were to make an issue, come up with an issue, for example, but it is certainly a risk if we do drop below that 1.5 times total annual debt service or the debt coverage ratio itself. So I would want to maintain good, healthy financial practices overall, and that's why I think we need to sustain that really policy that we have in place as a part of our financial management policies.
Counselor Johnson?
So then getting back to the 1.5 total debt service coverage, let's get my students on this. What are the units of that? Is this like debt per revenue or revenue per debt, or like how does the 1.5 get calculated exactly again?
So if your annual debt service, for example, is $2 million,
Yep.
you would want to generate net revenue equal to 1.5 times that. I can't do that off the top of my head right now. In essence.
3 million.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's simple enough, right? Spoke too soon. Yes. But anyway, yes, in essence, you'd be generating net revenue equal to $3 million. That is, in essence, your operating revenues in excess of your operating expenses overall. That $3 million, you'd use $2 million of that to pay your annual debt service, and that helps to provide that kind of cushion that we need, because we need to make sure that to the investors that we can guarantee that they're going to get repaid on an annual basis, and that helps to blunt any sort of volatility that may happen with the rate revenues that we generate.
So it's revenue divided by debt service.
Basic net revenues divided by debt service.
Okay, thank you.
And do you have any concerns regarding capital ending balances projected near zero?
Yes, of course. In a sense, there are part and parcel for the same problem. So of course, yes, if you take it in that context. Ending with zero at the start of 2026 in the sewer, in which case we don't have the same level of projects inbound. The ones we do have are the ones tied to the loan for the Class A water. So a lot of the work is going to be done in 2025 and 2026, which is associated with that loan, and the loan can be repaid quicker than something that would rely on our rates actually catching back up. So we'd be reimbursing ourselves kind of in the time that we pay. So mine's lower. Maybe Drew is a different.
I'll just mention two other policies that we have. So in reference to that third bullet point right there, keep in mind that it's capital and really capital unrestricted ending fund balances overall. So we want to maintain an operating reserve that protects the operating and expenses and the utilities themselves so that we can continue to operate those effectively and efficiently. And that is usually equal to 90 days of operating expenditures for water, wastewater, and stormwater. So we're maintaining those operating reserves as we go along. In addition to that, we would want to make sure that we also reserve sufficiently for debt service as well, too. So what's not mentioned there is probably the debt service reserve. I think that's protected under this. But in terms of any sort of cash above and beyond that, that would drop to zero. So the unrestricted portion of our water, sewer, and stormwater capital, or at least in this case, sewer capital balances would drop to zero.
Counselor Watton?
I presume that the cost of the sewer capital expenses is directly tied to the investments of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. And I guess the question is this: are there any parts of that can be stretched out? Because some of that is just anticipating future growth on our industrial commercial side that may not be coming along as quickly as we had forecasted. And by stretching that out, I know that there's going to be a certain amount of costs of inflation, but will it help mitigate some of this cost absorption that we're expecting people to take, or businesses to take in particular?
I checked in with our project engineer on this to kind of see what options there are. From his read, he doesn't believe that anything in the waste treatment facility 3 is a good candidate, as the stage at which we're along is very nearly complete, and what we're doing is trying to wrap it up and complete the project. There's an associated aspect of it, the Kimball Creek lift station, that needs improvements. They're directly associated with the success of the facility, and they're not tied to the development aspect of it, more about the efficiency of the system. So when we reviewed it, in theory, that could be, but it would need to be addressed rather quickly. It can't live on the shelf for too long, so to speak. The facility is expecting the Kimball Creek lift station to work properly. And so he did not feel very good about me saying what I just said there. He would not like to see that as an option. And then just to list the other projects that are in the capital side for sewer, we have the Class A water, which again has that loan associated with it. It's in 25 and 26. And then we have utility mains replacement projects. That's kind of like a bundle, so to speak. It's a program. In this case, it captures a couple projects. One of them will be completing 384th. One of them is a feasibility study for the, essentially, how do we get our mains across the Snoqualmie River more efficiently? And so we're going to do a feasibility study to identify what tactic we use to do that for Class A water and for sewer. And then the project itself would be in the future. So in theory, we could delay the, how do we get the mains across the river project? That one might be more complicated anyway, but that's not really what's hinging the 2025 debt service. So when Sergey and I were reviewing kind of all of our considerations, it wasn't really hitting the 25 problem. The ones that are overwhelmingly the existing projects that are kind of tied up in either regulations or level of completeness. Like 384th example, we don't want to not pave that road now, I presume. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to say? Sure.
Do you mind if I just ask a question to Sergey? Thank you. So Sergey, question for you. States that the projected scenario forecast sewer coverage at 1.39 times total annual debt service. Is water and stormwater above 1.5 at that stage, in which the total combined across all three utilities would still be above 1.5 times total annual debt service coverage?
The combined would still be with water sewer slightly above the 1.5.
Slightly above. All right. So we would still be able to fulfill policy at that stage. But I'm also a little bit reticent because once you start driving down that total annual debt service coverage, it becomes a little bit more risky, I think overall. But in this case, the combination of the two would be meeting policy. Or a combination of all three utilities. Sorry about that, not two.
Thank you.
Our city administrator.
Can I put on my old public works director hat and just mention this? One of the concerns I have about maximizing debt is that limits our ability for any new things that may come through legislation in the future. And if we're already bumping up against the ceiling and all of a sudden the state finds a new widget that we have to have, how are we going to pay for that? And that's something that hasn't been mentioned. I'm anticipating that there's going to be a lot of attention on water supply as a result of recent things in the news over the next few years. We're going to see an avalanche of legislation come as a result of what's going on right now down south. So.
Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, with the ridge being up a hill, fires go uphill really easily, generally speaking. So it's just something to think about.
Sergey, I think we should move on to the next slide.
Okay. And just one note to mention, I know we talked about this in the past, but as the city administrator mentioned, regulation does drive a lot of these cost increases. It affects stormwater utilities with NPDES requirements, so a lot more regulations coming out for treating stormwater runoff on the sewer side. especially the supply chain issues. I've seen personally through my studies, treatment plan estimates from 3 years ago be 1.5 times greater than they are. So I've seen system plans projecting treatment costs of 20 million coming in at 30 more recently. So this is a pretty system-wide, area-wide issue, not just localized for the city. Moving on with the presentation, running this adjusted scenario, wanted to provide you with some comparisons. Now, the upper table is the revenue requirement only slide table we saw a couple of minutes ago, which showed the $33.5 million total borrowing with the average across the board increase without taking into account cost of service adjustments. The alternative would drop the average residential bill to about 10%, followed by 6 and 4.7 thereafter, or 4.5s, but would require the increase of new debt by about $700,000 over the time horizon. Again, this is before the cost of service adjustments. Moving on to cost of service, again, because we only modify the sewer utility, the adjustment would decrease from 19% overall for 25 to about 14.5 after this alternative, and all the classes would be adjusted proportionally. Now, some classes are adjusted by 4.5, some less, some more. It's all proportionate based on the overall prior strategy and the phase-in alternative. The main change in the phase-in is occurring in 25. After 25, the adjustments are pretty much relatively unchanged. There might be some rounding or fractional changes because of proportionalities from changes to the first year, but really the major change is happening in 2025 each class. Lastly, for this question, we wanted to provide you with the average bill impact for each class of service average customer. So at the top, you're looking at the residential. Under the original heading, again, showing the cost of service phase-in now impacts for a typical residential bill versus the scenario that was requested, dropping it right under 10% for the first year, and then the future increases are relatively similar thereafter. Similarly,
Before you move on, we have a question in there.
Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, so on slide 16, the difference overall 2025 being 4.5% less of an increase. And then the rest projected out looks like it's the same. Is that 4.5% effectively equal to 700,000?
It's a combination of coverage and cash flow, so it's a little bit not quite apples and apples, but that's what it's being illustrated.
Okay, so it's approximately that amount-ish.
Right.
Thank you.
So again, the comparisons are here. The multifamily class would go down similarly from 4.6 to 3.4. After that, very almost the same, 2% to 1% adjustments. Commercial low and high would be similar adjustments in the first year, about 2% year one, similar thereafter. Commercial high, about 3% year one, and then similar thereafter. The next couple slides are just there to show you the request to identify what the prior adjustments were. I wanted to provide you some context behind some of the years because it's hard to illustrate all the changes that have occurred. Since, the furthest I was able to find in the short time duration that I had looking at ordinances and prior reports and studies was about 2012. Now, just to give you some caveats, a lot of structure changes have occurred since 2012. You used to have a pretty singular rate structure where everybody had the same fixed charge and the volume charge for the water utility. We gradually transitioned the rates to utility class specific fixed charges. You used to have an allowance that was included in your fixed charges. That was eliminated and then a single family tiered rate was introduced. You used to have surcharges for booster stations. Those were consolidated, eliminated. So there's a lot of rate structures that were changed, including a sewer strength rate to address the higher constituents that some of the bigger customers and more higher strength customers are contributing to the treatment plant, driving the expedited updates to our treatment plants themselves. So some of these years were big years in terms of big rate structure changes that have occurred, but also come in line with some of the bigger capital cost plans that were forecasted. In either case, you're going to see two tables per class of service. The first table shows you an average bill using the same assumptions that we used before for each utility and class, and then the percentage bill change. You'll see changes for residential class anywhere from no changes to up to 10% in 2018 and 19 time period, and more recently about 3% to 5% in the last 3 years or so, with no increases in 21. Multifamily saw the biggest reduction in rates, so to speak. They actually saw a big reduction in 2014 in total of close to 4%. Then had a little bit of an increase. Everybody had an adjustment in 17 through 19. A lot of cost pressures were coming in on the sewer front at that time. So they saw similar increases as everybody else during that stretch, and then saw actual total bill decreases last couple of years with negative 0.5% in 22 and 23, held constant in 21, and then recalibration in 24 because we did have that fiscal health review when we realized that inflation was just way higher than anticipated in the 2020 study. So we tried to do a preemptive adjustment in 2024. On the, yeah.
Wait,
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
Before we go off that page, I just want to note the increases in 2021, which was 0. That was middle of the pandemic. We decided to keep everything the same, give people a break while we're getting through this. But as you're all aware, the inflation went wacko and other things. That decision, that percentage will get compounded as it goes into the future. So there's a little bit of catch up to do here from what we did during the pandemic to ease the costs on people as we get through this. That's it, Sergey. Go ahead.
Yep, that's a great point. So next slide, we'll have the commercial classes. Similar trends. Again, the biggest changes occurred in 2014 or 16 time period where the strength rate based rates were started to being introduced, and you'll see the biggest change drivers on commercial low and high to continue, especially high in the 2017 time period that continued. The last 3 or 4 years have been a little closer to the average, slightly above, but not substantially greater than the 3% you saw in the prior classes. But there was a time stretch we were trying to make progress for cost of service. As you saw on the cost of service front, for the commercial high class, we're still a bit off. But we don't, again, this is a tightrope we have to walk where we're trying to get to cost causation principles. The council has expressed strong preference to provide to get to cost service for multifamily customers. The only way that we can make progress on one class is to make sure that everybody else is paying their allocated share of costs. So if we're going to be reducing the pressure on multifamily because the cost of service indicates you should, a different class that is indicating they need to pay their appropriate share of cost needs to be going up. Otherwise, we're not going to collect the appropriate revenues we're targeting. And really with that, that brings us to the end of the presentation. We're looking for feedback regarding the preference of the council, regarding the original rate strategy, the modified scenario, or whatever else policy guidance that you'd like to give us.
Thank you, Sergey. So council, what do you want to, I guess, what are the next steps? Councilor Johnson?
I think we talked a little bit about sending it back to committee to look with as fine tooth comb as they can at pushing out any of the various projects to try to do anything they can. There are some other ideas looking at staffing. Maybe that didn't go anywhere. That's fine, but at least have the conversation, find out if there's something we could do there. As well as looking at maximizing debt. And what I mean by that is perhaps staying at the 1.5 self-imposed limit, not dipping below that, but perhaps increasing to that level. But it sounded like a lot of the council, I thought, sounded like they were a little bit nervous about the numbers as they were and wanted to try to reduce them as much as they can. And we had at least a few ideas as to how we might be able to do that. So I think going back to committee one more time or two might make sense. So I guess I'll move to then back to committee.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Johnson, second by Councilor Watt, to move it back to Parks and Public Works Committee. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, and thanks so much to both the staff and the committee for their hard work on this. I mean, it is such a heavy lift. and it's so important to our residents. It's one of the things we hear the most about from our residents is the rates. So, thank you.
Who had their hand up? Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so, just thinking of what we need. So that would be a full review of the utility CIP. Determine if there's any projects that we can move out. That would be a review of staffing plans. And I'm not sure there's gold to be found in them Dare Hills. Because a lot of it is driven by regulations and whatnot. Okay, but let's have that discussion. And then the discussion, I think we're going back, probably pushing towards scenario 2, where we're looking at a much higher percentage of debt. And what impact that would have on the rates in question. I had a third thought and I lost it. That's probably more than enough for the next committee meeting. Oh, the other thought, guys, whether we delay a month or 2 months, I'm assuming you're gonna at least ask for a 3-year plan. So 1 month is less than 3%. Just 1 divided by 36 of what we will collect over the time of the plan. I'm not really concerned about that. I want us to get this right. Okay, so stop showing me that statistic. You'll just get me grouchy. Understood. The longer we wait, the less money we collect for the things we need to do, but let's get it right. How is it? Perfect.
Does our finance director have a comment?
Well, I just want to let council know that we will certainly work as quickly as possible, but you know, spring season is around the corner and so is the summer construction season too. So there's a time component to this to be able to get what we need to out the door so we can get the number of bids that is desired to hopefully drive down the potential cost of these projects. So that's where a lot of the time pressure is coming from when it comes to the Parks and Public Works Department, is to try to get a lot of this kind of stuff moving in the right direction so we can attract competition for our projects that we have.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, so the motion is to move it back to Parks and Public Works Committee, and then there's different things we've identified to look at. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, it's unanimous, and we'll be head back to committee for the next committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sergey.
Good job.
Next committee report this evening is Fire Department Strategic Plan Approval. Councilor Watton, would you please read the introduction and motion?
Give me a moment.
Yeah, bro. Re-gearing back, where are we?
I'll get to it in just a moment here. Thank you very much. This is kind of like going to shop at IKEA, you know, how much can you cram into a box and get the price down?
That's Costco.
But that too, that too.
Is that the motion you're reading?
Yeah. Free ad. Okay,
There it is.
all right.
The introduction's on the screen.
Yes, I have it here. This is a strategic plan. AB 25-005, Snoqualmie Fire Department 2025 to the 2030 strategic plan. And let me pop down here. The introduction is as part of the Snoqualmie Fire Department's accreditation process, the department must have an adopted strategic plan. The Center for Public Safety Technical Advisor Program, TAP, was contracted in 2024 to facilitate and construct the City of Snoqualmie Fire Department 2025-2030 strategic plan, and proposed action is to move to approve Resolution 1704, adopting the City of Snoqualmie Fire Department 2025-2030 strategic plan, and authorize the mayor to sign. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you.
Been moved by Councilor Watton and second by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway for the fire department strategic plan approval. And we have our Chief Bailey here who will give us an overview.
Good evening, council. Thanks for the time to speak with you tonight on this. Have a real quick presentation just to kind of go over a little bit about what we're talking about tonight. So first, excuse me. First, just as a reminder, how we got here. The fire department needs a strategic plan as part of our accreditation. Our last strategic plan was done 2017, 2018, expired in 23 or 22, extended it through 23, and then started the process of a new one in 24. And that's where we are here today with the final product. This is a community-driven strategic plan, which is part of the accreditation. That means we just want to make sure that we are involving more than just the fire department. You know, this is a community plan. So we did bring in community members back in over the summer. They did a survey, provided input on where the department was going, services we provided. And then in, I believe, early October, we had the internal meeting, which was a 3-day meeting with the technical advisor program that helped us put together the strategic plan. The documents that were provided in your agenda packet, actually in the appendices of the strategic plan, it goes over, it gives you all the raw, excuse me, make that right there. You guys are busy going on a call. It gives you the raw data as to how everything that was collected from the meetings, all the ways that we kind of got to where we were. So that's all in the appendixes of the strategic plan. So just to hit a couple highlights of the plan. First of all, you know, we start out with our mission statement here. That didn't change from our last strategic plan. We felt it was still valid, still talked about where the department was trying to do and what our mission was going forward. So we kept our strategic plan, or excuse me, I'm sorry, we kept our mission statement. The next thing that we worked on was our values. So the values for the department, this is just kind of what we hold dear, what we're looking at, and just the highlights on those is the 4 main things was service excellence, collaboration with partners, responsiveness, and inclusiveness. That's kind of what we focused on was our values. The next one here talks about our vision statement. And this is basically where we want to go as a department. The 4 things that we really focused on in this one that came out of this is where we want to go would be the commitment to professional development and member growth of our firefighters, to be able to anticipate and exceed community expectations through innovation and training and service, and to provide excellent customer service through positive interactions with those we serve. So that's all part of our official, you know, mission statement, vision, and values. The next one there is we go into what we had for the goals. And these are the 4 strategic goals that came out of this plan that we're going to be working on for the next 5 years. And then we'll go ahead and talk about those just real briefly individually. So the next slide there, Anna. So the first goal was to attract and retain qualified staff throughout the agency that provides for internal development and reduces attrition. Before I get into this, I just want to highlight the strategic plan has the 4 goals. The other document that was included in your packet is actually the implementation guide. And that's more of a fluid document. I mean, this is a 5-year plan. Things change, it ebbs and flows. The goals of the council might change. So although the strategic plan is for 5 years, the actual implementation plan where it talks about the objectives, how we get to those goals is something that is going to change, you know, possibly could change from year to year over those 5 years as the wants and the needs of the council change and as we fine tune. So just wanted to point that out before we get into these. So again, the first goal there, and that really has to do with keeping the good people that we have, making sure that we attract even more people or the people to replace them that meet the visions and values of the department, and to set up our people for success. The highlights of the objectives on those was to basically evaluate and look at what we currently have in the department and the organizational structure. Is it meeting our needs? Is there any need for changes? The next was to look at the officer program, which is with a younger department. I think I've mentioned it before to the public safety and the overtime. That's one of the issues with our large overtime is we just don't have that experience behind to be able to step in when our officers are gone. So build up the acting officer program to make sure that not only do we move people in those positions, but our younger members
that we have had in the department the last couple of years, making sure that we plan to get them into those positions with their training. And then to work with the city to retain the members that we do have, just making sure that there's a comprehensive study to make sure we're doing what we can for wages, benefits, and all the good stuff that you guys get to think about. And the last one is to help retain our members is to celebrate our successes. We need to do a better job of celebrating when our people, their education, their promotions, their hirings, some of those things, our annual banquet, some of those things internally in the department, just to make sure that our members are feeling valued. The next goal we have there is goal 2, which is really poignant nowadays with what's happened in the last week down in LA. But that all has to do with wildland protection. I got to get to the right thing there. There we go. So wildland protection. So is with the emerging risk in wildfire. It used to be an Eastern Washington problem. We all know that it's now creeping over to our side. And this is really just making sure that the city's prepared and that we're doing what we need to make sure not only the department and the city's ready. So the goal for this one was to train, prepare, and equip to enhance the current wildland program based on the demands and the needs so that it will match the growth of the city and the region while meeting or establishing established department standards and performance benchmarks. It's a lot of words, but basically, like I said, it's looking at what we're doing, making sure it's right, and then planning for the future to make sure we're protecting our citizens and our city. So the highlights for the objectives for that one was to basically analyze and look at what we're currently doing. And then we're also going to look at the findings from that analysis to come up with a plan as to how we need to grow, what equipment, what apparatus, what training we might need for our firefighters. We're also going to look at the city response plan as well as the region response plan to make sure the best practices are being done so that we can get the people here when we need it. Look at the training and build up our training program for the wildland. Also, we want to look at our public education program for wildfires and make sure that we evaluate that and get the information out to our citizens to help them be prepared. And then lastly, just reevaluate the program, continually reevaluating it as it grows forward. So goal 2 was really all just centered around the wildfire issue that we'll be facing in the next couple of years. The next one there, goal 3, has to do with acquiring, maintaining, and improving physical resources based on the demands and the needs to match the growth of the city and the region while meeting or exceeding national standards. Basically, this is all about, where we are going to be in the next 5 years with equipment, facilities, making sure we keep up. Our station's 20 years old, making sure that we plan for the future and we stay on top of where we want to be as a department in regards to resources in the next 5 years. We're going to look at our processes, establish committees to make sure that we're working with the city, with Dylan, the capital improvement man, to make sure that we're looking forward for those next 5 years. Provide appropriate training when we do get the resources into the department, and then evaluate continually. And a lot of these you'll see continually evaluating and make sure that what we've done so far is making a positive impact. The last one on here, goal 4, is to improve relationships with external stakeholders, including council, city departments, community groups, regional partners through enhanced communication and interaction, incorporating feedback into the operations. This just points back to what we were saying in the very beginning. This is a community-driven strategic plan as well as internal. We want to make sure that we're being good partners in the city. We're lined up with the goals. Although this is a fire department specific plan, we want to make sure that it meets the goals of the council and lines up with the goals of the city. And so the steps or the objectives on that one is to enhance our communication with the community, to provide public education interaction. That's just, again, goes back to the very beginning where I said, making sure that we're doing what the community wants, providing the education and the programs that they need. The next one there is to work with the city council on fire department operations and create buy-in to create future needs and goals. And please don't look at that as educate as anything negative. I've had great conversations with the council, and it's really just to say that we want to enhance those to make sure that you understand what we do so that you can make informed decisions when we come and ask for things or when we look at service deliveries to make sure we're providing the best. So please don't look at that educate as a negative. It was more just talking about building that relationship. The next one there's is to talk about our internal partners with the rest of the directors, the rest of the department in the city, making sure we're meeting their needs, making sure we can work on that communications, break down some of those silos that you see because we are kind of separated from City Hall. We want to make sure that we're working with the police department, Public Works, and look for opportunities that we can work a little closer together. And the last one is to work with our partner fire departments around us, be good stewards of our budget, look for opportunities where we might be able to work together better, whether it be on a technical rescue team or some of the different committees we have. Look for economies of scale that we can, try to enhance over the next 5 years and keep a good eye on where we're going with our resources. So that was just kind of a real quick overview of where we are with the strategic plan. So the next steps you're going to see over the next couple of years, like I said, this is a 5-year plan. Don't expect all of these things to happen in the first month. This is something we're continually going to be working on in the department. Kind of gives us a roadmap for the future of where we want to go. But again, like I said, there's nothing to say that we can't change this, and you'll see there with the next steps. So the first thing is we've already, looking at is creating a work plan for implementation. What are we going to start working on first? What are the steps we're going to take to start moving toward these goals? The next one is review our progress at our monthly officer meeting. This is currently what we're doing. That's what we did with our last strategic plan. This just helps keep us on track to make sure we're making progress on these goals. Report the progress quarterly to the Public Safety Committee and to the council. We do that through our quarterly accreditation report. There's a section that kind of lists the goals and the objectives, what we're working on, what we've completed, just to keep you apprised of how we're moving through the process. And then the last one is just update implementation plan annually. Just like I said, it's a living document. Look at it. Did we accomplish what we wanted over the last year? Do we need to adjust things? Do we need to change things around? What we want to do for the next year? And do we want to make changes to that implementation plan? So that's there, we'll look at that annually. So that's just a kind of a real quick overview of where we are with this strategic plan. It was a lot of time and effort that was put in by our members. I'm really proud of the work we did over those 3 days. And I think it gave us a really good overall reaching goals on where we want to be in the next couple of years. And, we're bringing this to the council so that you can take a look at it. We wanted to include it in your packets. And then we asked for it to be adopted so that we could move forward with looking at these goals and objectives.
Thank you. Councilor Watton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Bailey. And part of the reason why we brought it here rather than put it on the consent agenda is so that we can highlight this. And I want to commend the department as being one of the very few in this country of an internationally accredited program. I want to thank Council members Cotton and Christensen for being part of this process as well. I had the opportunity 7 years ago or so to be part of the last group that went through this. But I want to make sure too that these things are not just a plan that goes on the shelf. We are very unique in the fact that we have our own independent fire department. We have direct impact on making sure that we have a very responsive department. We did that in our budget. We were able to add 3 more firefighters/EMTs, and that's going to improve our response time. But it's also being a good neighbor because we're required to do mutual aid because we benefit from other departments. And here's the last thing, and that was goal 4. Please, council members, find a time and contact Chief Bailey and spend a few hours with our professional firefighters. Understand what they go through, go on a few calls with them, see what they go through every day. I had the chance early on, and it was very enlightening. So please, if you haven't had that chance, see what part of a day is in our fire department. And we need to continue to support this because, again, we're one of the few independent agencies, and it's something very special. And it's something that we need to make sure that we understand so that when it comes back to us, whatever direction we go in the future, we need to make sure that it's not just within Public Safety Committee. It's the entire council, it's the entire administration. So please, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then all in favor of the fire department strategic plan approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? It's unanimous and nice job on the strategic plan. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next item is the Agenda Bill 25-002 Amendment to the 2019 North Bend Interlocal Agreement for Police Services. And we added this for discussion. We'll turn over to our City Administrator Chambliss.
So on December 17th, we met with North Bend and developed a framework of amendment to the existing ILA to carry us into the next 6 months so we can finalize the negotiations over the changes to the ILA. I submitted this bill on December 18th, the next day. Unfortunately, and then went on holiday break. Unfortunately, during the holiday break, there were some changes to the bill that were not incorporated in time for the last committee meeting, so I asked to have that pulled. Since then, North Bend has passed their version of the bill. Dina and I will be working to create the instrument as an exhibit for the next public safety meeting, which is on Monday, so that we can pass the same exact thing so that we're all talking about apples rather than apples and oranges. So I just wanted to clear the air of why that item was pulled and let you know that in 2 weeks, you will have a amendment to the existing ILA before you for your consideration.
And I would state that we were encouraged by the unanimous vote by the North Bend City Council on this. There were 6-0. There was one council member that was absent, but it is a positive move forward. And we've had good meetings with their mayor and interim city administrator. So anyway, that's it. Is there any further report for Public Safety Committee?
Not at this time. Thank you. But one thing, we've got a
But
lot
is that-
on the
is that a
agenda,
report?
but one thing, we've got a full agenda for our next meeting of public safety. So if you're interested, come to the meeting or
Great, thank
watch
you.
us online.
Right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Is there any report from Community Development Committee?
No report.
Thank you. And any further report, Parks and Public Works Committee?
No.
Wait a minute.
Representative Holloway?
No,
No,
Brian
But-
has something.
Okay,
Well, just that, given the discussion we just had prior, we may want to start Parks and Public Works at 4:30 instead of 5.
That's a good idea.
Okay,
4:30 on Monday?
Tuesday. Wednesday. Isn't it Martin Luther
Wednesday.
King Monday? Yes,
Oh,
everything gets shifted a day, so it'll be Wednesday at 4:30.
So our normal meeting time is on Wednesday this coming week. So do we want to start the meeting on Tuesday?
No, because somebody will be in here on Tuesday.
All right.
okay, so it'd be 4:30 Wednesday.
Yeah.
We can make that change. Thank you. Next item under Finance Administration Committee is the Council 2025 meeting calendar, AB 25-006. Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, would you please read the introduction and motion?
All right, purpose of the agenda bill is council consideration of canceling the following meetings to allow council staff advance notice of time off for work-life balance, that being August 25th, city council, August 18th and 19th committees to not occur. Also, the council meeting on December 22nd, 2025, and committee meetings on the 15th and 16th to not occur. With that, the rest of the schedules will follow on per our normal flow. If adopted, all parties understand special meetings may be necessary for council to bring forward one or more items for action. The meetings must be noticed pursuant to council rules of procedure and Open Public Meeting Act. This must be done 24 hours prior to the meeting. With recommended action of move to cancel the August 25th, 2025, December 22nd, 2025 city council regular meetings, and August 18th and 19th, 2025, December 15th and 16th, 2025 council committee meetings. May I have a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and second by Councilor Watton to approve the council meeting calendar.
If
Sorry.
we bring the calendar up, everybody can see it. And
Is there any public comment regarding this item? So please raise your hand in chambers.
Cinco de Mayo.
Seeing none.
Cinco de Mayo.
Any discussion? Counselor Benson?
I think we should have a long discussion where we all complain about canceling these meetings and then eventually vote to cancel these meetings.
That was last year.
It's a tradition. I am
See-
against it, but I'm gonna vote for it.
So canceling the meetings allows our employees to catch up on things, as well as being able to take time off and not worry about things. So
That is the traditional argument to win the day.
there you go. Thank you. Did you want to see the calendar? Did you see it or?
Either that or page 2 of it, if you want to look at it yourselves, shows the dates and what we're gonna have.
Yeah, that's good.
You may also note, some Mondays, holidays will shift meetings around.
Right.
The artwork.
So there's the calendar.
Cinco de Mayo.
Beautiful. It's really beautifully done.
It's a fake holiday anyway.
Maybe we can roll it. There we go. Thank you. Right. Any discussion, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And it's unanimous. The council 2025 meeting calendar is approved.
Should schedule tacos.
Next, we move on to the mayor's report. I just have a couple items. First of all, Happy New Year. So the Snoqualmie Valley Government Association meets next Wednesday, the 22nd, and Carnation is hosting. So I'd encourage council members to attend that if you're not attending finance administration. So it's kind of during that same time period. So unfortunately, so some of us would not be able to go, but some of you that are involved in those committee meetings could go. So I encourage you to go. Legislative session started today. And if you're interested in hearing the weekly recaps, this AWSC, you can has a city action calls on Fridays. And so you can sign up for them and hear about what happened during the week. And so, and also council, we have our legislative priorities. And so please contact your legislators to encourage them to continue reviewing our list as they are moving through the session. And all important, our council photo will be taken next council meeting. And so if you would show up 15 minutes early, that'd be 6:45, and Dana will be taking our annual photo. So that's all I have.
We changed 2 weeks.
Do we have any commission? Is there a question about that?
That's 2 weeks from now?
Yes. At our normal council meeting, yes. Any committee reports, liaison reports? Oh, Councilor Christensen?
Just met with the Y last week. They are starting their annual fund drive. This is where they try to raise money. It does not go towards keeping the light on or keeping the treadmill running, but it's so that they are able to provide for things like scholarships for the kids who can't afford, for example, before after care or learn how to play sports, that type of thing. So you'll be seeing some additional information coming out from them. In other good news, their membership for the city, they're over 1,000 membership units, which can be like a family of 4 or a single person. But they're serving over 2,000 people that have the 98065 area code, as well as I think about 400 out of North Bend as well. There's a number of upcoming events, including Winterfest on February 7th, which is open to the community. They also wanted me to let you guys know that they're also having Jump Around on January 20th and 27th. This is another free event open to the community with bouncy houses and such. And then every week they have community cards on Tuesdays from 6 to 8, community teen basketball, Mondays and Fridays for a couple hours every day from 3 to 5, community tween club on Wednesdays from 5 to 6:30. And those are all, again, open to the community, whether or not you are a Y member. You can send your teenagers and tweens over to eat pizza and be supervised in a beneficial way.
Great. Thank you. Any other updates? Seeing none. Our city administrator, do you want a brief update on department reports?
Yeah, this is kind of the year-end batch, so I encourage you to dig in there. A few of the things that kind of jumped out at me is that our communications department sent out 32,291 email newsletters. Now, that's, you hit send, right? But what's remarkable about that and the quality of work of those emails is 18,400 people actually read it. That's impressive. As somebody who's done marketing for events in the past or whatever, a 10% click rate is considered high. That's huge. So information like that's kind of buried in here, and I encourage you to take it out. Year to date, we wound up issuing about 431 building permits, which resulted in over 621 building inspections. The fire department had a busy month in December. Encourage you to read about that. They had several fires. Not a great time for that. And their annual report on inspections is also in here. Parks and Public Works describes the storm recovery activities that they have been doing and continue to do, and along with supporting the Lights On event and projects, etc. And then finally, the police department have their numbers in, and crime went down this year in December. So I encourage you all to look at this closely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And we do not need an executive session this evening. So we can go right to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
No.
Let's see.
Uh-oh.
Moved by
Can I have a second?
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
Can I have a
Oh, wait, hold on.
I said so.
Yeah,
Hold the
let's
bus.
fly.
There may be a announcement from our finance director.
I don't know if
Only
I
if
want to
it's
spoil the
good.
fun anymore.
You don't.
But I wanted to mention the payroll system to everyone. We did get that underway, so we did go live. Unfortunately, I didn't have it in time for Mike's comments overall, but we did get the payroll up and running. We asked every employee, did you receive a deposit and did the amount look correct? The answer was pretty much in the affirmative across the board. A few small hiccups here and there that we were able to address quickly. Some things that we still have to work on, such as accrual tables and making sure that people can read the pay stubs correctly and that they're corrected for everyone. But otherwise, I think it was a resounding success overall to kind of get that underway. Hugely impactful internally overall. We've had the dream team working for about 8 months to get us to this stage. I'm at this point, I can't tell you how many pay types and benefit induction types, right, that we have to address, how many shift schedules that there are across the board, across the city, and the complexity itself is certainly overwhelming to me, but I'm glad that my team was able to kind of keep that all under wraps for the most part and stay focused, find that kind of grit that they needed to and persevere to getting us to this kind of stage that we're at. So we're very thankful for their entire effort. If you want a reason why it's important for us to have kind of this holiday break at the end of December, well, it's because my team spent the entire month of December, including that ending part, actually focused on making sure that we can get this payroll system up and running, which included not only the days around the holiday, but also on the weekends just to get us to this stage. So I can't thank them enough. And thank you, council, for your time, attention, and your grace to allow us to kind of reach this stage and get us through really phase 2, which we are so close, probably 3 more months until closeout, but we are making progress. So thank you. Have a good night.
Nice job. There was, let's see, it was moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway and it was seconded by Councilor Christensen. So we are adjourned. Thank you.